I think everyone is officially joined from the waiting room, so I will kick us off. My name is Sophie Block. I'm the director of Hillels of Memphis, and thank you all for joining us today for our On One Foot Jewish Faculty Lecture series. Our lecturer today is Dr. Samantha Alperin, who I know many of you know as a member of our Jewish community here. She's the Director of Teacher Education in the Department of Education at Christian Brothers University, among many other important roles there. After completing her undergraduate degree at UT Knoxville, she pursued her master's and doctorate at U of M in curriculum and instruction. And she is going to tell us all about the ever-changing field of higher education now and in the context of COVID moving forward. So with that, I will officially pass the mic over to Dr. Alperin.
Thank you, Sophie. I'll tell you, I am probably a little more nervous with this crowd because I am used to like lecturing to people I don't know. So I'm thinking, Barbara and Hal, very nice to meet you both. I think everybody else I know, and that was such a nice introduction, Sophie. So I don't know if I need to like apologize to Barbara and Hal. Charlie, I know you, and that this is like my my peanut gallery here with my kids and my mom, my aunt, and all my very good friends. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go into professor mode and just pretend that I'm just going to like be talking to people I don't know. So that was a nice introduction, Sophie. Thank you so much. Most of you probably already know I've been in higher education for over 20 years. I was at University of Memphis as an adjunct instructor while I did my doctorate for a couple of years. And then I've been at Christian Brothers University now for 19 years. So my kids have really never known me to be anywhere else but on the grounds of CBU. And they are not at CBU. My kids kind of followed in the Alperin family footsteps, and we bleed orange and white. They're both at UT Knoxville. Parker is on the screen, graduating in May. Gave him 5 years to do this. So he is going to be gainfully employed come June 1st, right, Parker? And Leah with a towel on her head. This is very informal. So Leah is a sophomore at the University of Tennessee. So nobody came to CBU because I guess free wasn't good enough for my children. So, but we are very proud of them for being where they are. I have been married for almost 29 years to my husband, who is sitting across the office from me right now. And he has been with Hilton Hotels now for over 23 years. So what I'll be talking about later on is the marketplace and really how very rare it is for people to keep
the other side of the crisis. So the team has all of.
Sorry about that.
What was that?
Keep going.
Okay. How unusual it is for people to keep within their designated professions for longevity, and we've been lucky enough to do that. And but it would be normal for people to jump around in the job market a little more. But let me back up just a little bit before I talk about that. So let me back up about a year ago to March 12th of 2020. I had just gotten back from a conference in New Orleans with my faculty. We had gone down there for a conference, and as we're driving down there, I keep getting these emails from my school, you know, COVID this, COVID that, and I pretty much just started deleting them because it wasn't that I was a non-believer. Please do not put it out there. I do believe in COVID. But they just kept sending us these notices. We're going to decide what to do. And I'm thinking, well, what are you going to decide what to do? We're staying open. Why are we even talking about this? So I kept deleting all the emails that our president kept sending us because I was at a conference. And on our way back from the conference on March 10th, that Wednesday, we're driving back and my daughter Leah sends me a text, UT is out until April 4th. And I thought, oh goodness, this is getting real. You know, if the 30,000 student school at University of Tennessee has decided to close for 2 weeks, we're really going into something serious. So we got back from the conference on March 11th. On March 12th, that Thursday, our faculty was called into the auditorium, and we were told that we were going to be online for 2 weeks. They were giving us 2 weeks to be online, get this mess all straightened out, and then we'd be back in school. So that's where we were, and that's where we thought the whole world was. And so I met with my class for the very last time on that Thursday, March the 12th, and I might as well not have taught anything to them that morning because they were just so scared. They were, you know, they're 20 and they want to know, why is my school closing, and why are we being sent home? And we're pretty much a commuter campus, so most of our kids don't have to go out of town. You know, my kids had to move home, and well, one of them Leah was a freshman, so we had to move her home. Parker could have stayed in his house, but thankfully chose to come and hang with us. So, but most of our kids are commuter students at CBU, so they don't worry about having to move, but they were worried about what was happening in their classes. So I was department chair at the time. I'm no longer the department chair, but at the time, I pretty much said to my faculty, okay, guys, start throwing mud at the wall and seeing if it'll stick. And so we did. And some of us had been through online training. Most hadn't. I was fortunate enough. We have 7 faculty and 4 of us had been through formal online training. And online education is it's an entity of its own. To me, it was unacceptable to throw PowerPoints online and think you were actually teaching that way. And so I said to my faculty, this is good enough. If that's what you have to do, it's good enough through the end of the semester. We're going to go from March to May. We had already canceled, but by this time, as soon as we were in the throes of everything, you know, we had already canceled graduation and everything. So we were just kind of seeing if, you know, what we could do to hold these kids for the rest of the semester. But I told them that after the spring was over, throwing PowerPoints up and having kids submit their assignments through email would no longer be acceptable. That's not quality education. It's not what our students. So okay, so here we are, March through May, and we are teaching in some semblance online. But the truth was that every time I would hold my class online, they weren't paying attention. They didn't know what COVID was. I didn't know what it was, and they were no longer paying attention to my content anymore. And now the nice thing about being a teacher, being a K-12 teacher, those of you who've been in the K-12 situation, is we just roll with it. You know, there's always going to be something. So anyway, what I was noticing with my kids is, and sorry, I flip back and forth. My real kids are Parker and Leah. When I talk about my kids in the classroom, those are my higher ed kids. They're all my kids. But what I noticed is that they did not want to talk about language arts. They wanted to talk about what's going to happen. Am I going to graduate? Am I going to get a job? What's happening in this world? And they're 20 and that's what they're allowed to ask. And that's, a difference between small university mentality and big university mentality. I would venture to say, and my own children who are on the screen can probably agree, their instructors were not going to stop their class and have a whole discussion with them about, what their life is like right now. They were just, but that's a big school. They had, 70 to 100 kids in a classroom, and that's not what their professors are going to do. Well, I had the luxury of having less than 10 kids in a classroom to talk to them about that. So pretty much I kind of held them together for the end of the semester, but I spent more time coaching and being their social worker and their friend more than I was their college professor for about 3 months. And like I said, that was going to work for a few months, but come summer, come fall, we needed to get to a place where we were actually teaching these kids. So we moved online completely with a lack of resources. My very good friend from New York said, Sam, you always explain when people ask what you do, that you teach teachers to teach. I bet you never thought about teaching to teach in this situation. And I said, no, you're right, absolutely. As a K-12 teacher myself, we always have, I teach my students, you always have to have your bag of tricks. Literally, in my classes, we do A to Z strategies, and they make boxes, or I bring them canvas bags, and they have strategies A to Z about what do you do when we have to go out for a fire drill. Well, you grab your bag and you take it with you, and you keep your class together out, in the parking lot during the fire drill. Or what do you do when you have a power outage? Well, you have that bag ready to go, and you teach even with a power outage. But I didn't ever prepare them to teach in a pandemic, where they would all of a sudden have to leave a brick and mortar classroom and actually have to teach in a bunch of boxes like I'm looking at you right now. So I had to admit to them very humbly, you know what, I've never done it this way. I don't know quite what to tell you what to do. So we all learned it together. We ourselves in higher ed had to learn how to teach in the little boxes, which is of course a little different than having to manage a second grade classroom. I mean, I know when my own students are on screen, I can tell just by looking at their faces that, they're making their target list in their head. And, I probably do the same thing when I'm in a seminar. But managing a K-12 classroom, managing a special ed classroom, that was an even bigger challenge. Our students who are learning to teach in a functional skills classroom, how do you do that from a box when you actually have to be hand over hand with these kids in the classroom? So we've had a lot of challenges, a lot of having to teach new skills. The other challenges we've had at the higher ed level is how are we dealing with this going forward? How are we dealing with admissions going forward? Yesterday, we had a faculty assembly meeting, and we've been told that of our incoming freshman class, 45% of them have not even taken an ACT yet. Well, how do we deal with that? And what I find myself asking more and more these days is, how long are we going to let COVID be an excuse? In teacher ed, our teachers have to get licensed. They have to have a test, and they have to take the test and pass it before we can license them. And I say that in the state of Tennessee, but I'm assuming that every state has their licensing procedures. As of August, the licensing portals went on lockdown browsers so they can take them at home. So thankfully in teacher prep, they're able to actually do that. My son Parker, who is about to take his Fundamentals of Engineering exam, cannot do that at home. He has to actually go to a testing site to do that. And that's very volatile right now. What if the testing site closes? He has a window in which he can take the test. Well, what if that closes? So we're dealing with a lot of issues in higher ed that are beyond our control. We have moved all of our student teachers online. And I'm kind of looking around to see, I guess it would only be Andrea who has done any type of student teaching before, but, imagine, having to have your first classroom of your own, right here on a box, on a computer. And, we say a lot in teacher ed, we can teach you all the theory and practice we want, but the rubber hits the road when you hit that classroom by yourself. But we're talking about brick and mortar classrooms. We're not talking about classrooms in a box online. So all of that has changed. Our admissions processes have changed. In the state of Tennessee, you actually have to have a minimum ACT score. Those of you who are watching from up north, we're ACT here in the South, not SAT for most of our schools, but same thing. But you have to have a minimum ACT score to get into a teacher prep program. Our engineering and science programs require minimum scores to get into their programs. So there's a lot on the line right now in higher ed as far as admissions processes and how are we going to have certain students on campuses if we're not looking at scores at all. So, I said before, 45% right now of our incoming freshman class have not reported ACT scores. I don't even know from the standpoint of Christian Brothers University, are we going to actually require the ACT scores? Are we going to have some other subjective way of allowing kids to come on campus? Are we going to look at their grades? Are we going to do interviews? I don't know. I'm not an admissions, so I don't know the answer to that question. But it's very volatile for us, and we're in teacher ed, we're up against what the state tells us to do. So if we don't have a minimum ACT score for a student, we have to rely on the State Department to say, okay, well, if you're not going to have an ACT score, you're going to need to look for X, Y, and Z before your student comes in. So it's doable. It just makes it a little more difficult on the higher ed side to figure out how we're going to make this happen. I heard not too long ago, hey, Sophie Ostro, those of you who are looking for, those of you who are graduating or looking for career changes, I heard not too long ago that pharmacy schools, all pharmacy schools across the country have gone to no more PCATs. So, what's going through my mind is, okay, so how do you get admitted? Most pharmacy students were chemistry majors. So and what are they going to be looking at? So a lot is really up in the air. And I think a lot of this was being talked about before COVID came along. And I think the pandemic gave higher ed a new reason to look at changes in policies that they want to do. So, that's on the table as well. As far as higher ed going forward, my school's scared. Rhodes is scared. Small private schools are very nervous about this. Rhodes made the decision at the beginning of the year to not let anyone on campus, including their incoming freshmen. So, for my kids to go back to Knoxville, well, of course, we already had contracted apartments we were paying for. So, that was kind of their excuse to say, hey, we can go back to Knoxville. But, and they started, I think, if I'm correctly, guys, you started with like 2 classes in person, 3 online, and then pretty much by December, they were pretty well all online. So, most parents we're paying for our kids to live on campus, but they're not actually going to class. They're not getting that college experience that most of us all had. And I think that is something that universities are looking at going forward. How do we charge, how do private schools charge, $70,000 to $100,000 in tuition when we're not letting these kids on campus for the college experience? Is it, and I mean, it's going to be a personal choice, obviously. Harvard's not going anywhere. I think people will still go to our Ivy League schools for the degree from where they're going, regardless of living on campus or not. But I think that is something that parents and students really need to have that heart-to-heart talk about, is if you're going to be sitting online, is it worth the price of tuition if you're going to be staying at home while you're learning online? And some kids are lucky enough to have really, really great scholarships that, make it the cost of in-state tuition. And, I think that's great. But I think that a lot of small universities like mine are there. I mean, and, we got the CARES Act money and all that kind of stuff because we are a small institution. But I think it's going to be something that I think we're going to see the face of higher education change over the next few months as parents and kids are really making decisions about, is it going to be worth the money to pay out-of-state tuition, to pay private school tuition, if you are going to be sitting in your dorm or if you're going to be at home. And that's just going to be a personal choice. But I will say, our university is a little nervous about that, as well we should be. We brought in a new president a year and a half ago, and the whole plan was to get our numbers up. We hover at around 1,900 students, undergrad and grad. But we know what we really need to survive as a university. When we moved our kids off campus, the amount of money that was lost because we had to refund the dorms. You can't keep we kept, obviously their tuition, but you can't keep the housing and the meal plans if the kids aren't living on campus. So all of that was refunded, and the university took a really hard hit from that. And I mean, not just our university, every university, I'm sure, took a terrible hit from something like that. So economically, for small private schools, I think we're going to struggle for the next few years as this all gets sorted out. At the K-12 level, and Sophie, I have a tendency to just ramble and ramble, so you just cut me off when you need to cut me off. At the K-12 level, what was interesting at the K-12 level, what we saw was more kids going to private school this year, which we thought was very interesting. Higher ed, we had parents saying, oh no, if you're going to be sitting online, you can be sitting online and I'll pay state school tuition. We saw something different at the K-12 level, and we saw parents actually here in Memphis. I mean, I don't know what's happening all over the country. But in Memphis, what we saw were more kids going to private K-12 schools because they were willing to teach in person or in some kind of a hybrid format, whereas our public school system, Shelby County Schools, is the largest public school system in the state of Tennessee, employing over 14,000 faculty, staff, and administrators. And they're totally online. They have been online since last March. So they're going into a whole academic year and a half of being online. Some of our municipalities are in hybrid format. Some of them are totally in person, but we saw parents making a decision to go ahead and spend the money on private school tuition so that their kid could have the in-person experience. And it could have been because they wanted their children to have the in-person experience. It could have been because parents need to work and they could not stay home with the second grader who is learning online. They needed them in a school building. So it was interesting the switch we saw from public to private at the K-12 level. which of course was great for the private schools. One thing we are concerned about is what damage has the pandemic done at our K-12 schools. So at some of our private schools, what we're seeing, or not even just private schools, it's actually public and private. What we're seeing are frustrated teachers. Some parents are looking at it as we can just go on vacation whenever we want. And what happens is the teachers are losing the kids. They're like, oh, I was at the beach today, or I was at Disney World today. And online learning is synchronous learning. It is, you are in front of your laptop for 7 hours a day. It's not asynchronous, like some of the classes my kids have at school. Some of the classes I teach are asynchronous. You can just go on and do your work whenever you feel like it. K-12 learning is in person, even if that in person means that you're online. And so what we've seen are complaints from teachers that some families are taking advantage of the fact that, oh, they can just learn whenever they feel like it, and we can just go on vacations. Other problems we're seeing are that teachers are having, beside kids not being in the actual classroom, is that while they're at home, they might be at home by themselves, and they're getting up and they're having to let the dog out, or they're having to feed the little brother or sister, that while the parent is at work. And we're seeing problems on that side also, that the children are there, but they're not right there all the time, because there isn't an adult around who can do all the extras that are going on. So we're seeing a lot of teachers saying, I can't control my classroom, and because I'm getting no support on the other side of the laptop for this kind of help. And that's an inherent problem also. And those are in addition to the fact that to Wi-Fi problems. I've had teachers tell me that the Wi-Fi was down, for 2 days. They couldn't do anything for 2 days except email the kids back and forth, but they couldn't get the Zoom working. One of my teachers said to me, she's a math teacher. She said, do you know that last week I got 5 homework assignments back out of 86. So it's the management part of this. They can teach. Good teachers can teach. I mean, that is, if you're a good teacher, you can teach you could teach in a shoebox if you have to, but managing when you're not in that brick and mortar classroom becomes an inherent problem, and not something that is easily fixable, unfortunately. So going back to the classroom is going to be really hard. Our governor, so I don't know if he's retracted this or not, but a couple of weeks ago, he said all kids need to be in the classroom in person for 70 days to make this year count. I'm pretty sure he's retracted it by now, because the getting the kids back in the school for 70 days is becoming harder and harder as it's already February. But going back to the classroom is not going to be easy for our teachers. So something we are talking about in a teacher prep program is, how do we prep our teachers? Because we have a good amount of our master's students who are already in the classroom. They're not just going to show up March 1st and say, okay, we're just back to normal. It doesn't happen that way. You're talking about a group of teachers and a group of children who have been online, a little more casual, being able to wear what you want, eat what you want, get up from the camera whenever you want. And we're talking about putting them back into a structured classroom. And so what we've been telling our teachers is, if they say Shelby County Schools, you're going back on March 1st, you take the first 2 weeks, you pretend it's the first week of school. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to teach the little kids how to line up, and you're going to have to teach them the procedures for turning in homework. It is not, you're not going to be able to just flip from being right here on a screen to all of a sudden being in a classroom. So there's a lot we have to think about at the higher ed level and the K-12 level as we talk about going back into the school building. Parker, my son, asked me yesterday, do you think kids should be in school? Yes, 100%. I think children should be in school, definitely. I think higher ed is going to change, and that's going to become a little more lax. I think we're going to see a whole lot more undergrad programs that are offered in online format because we've realized that we can do it that way. That's something I never asked my own children, and I'll be honest with you, I never asked the students I teach either, how do you like learning better? And I'd be real interested to find out from the undergrad population, what do you prefer? Do you like the flexibility? I mean, my daughter is taking like 19 hours this semester, but she's able to do it because 3 of her classes are asynchronous. She can get on and she can do that at midnight if she wants to. So the flexibility with undergrad education and being able to take more hours and maybe even get finished with their undergrad degrees faster might be very attractive in the future. K-12, I would hate to see it. I would hate to see these kids. I'd hate to see first graders online, starting next year forever. I just, you learn socialization in a school setting. There's a reason we have public schooling. There's a reason we have private schooling. You learn a lot being in a lunchroom and understanding social skills. You learn a lot by following rules. You learn a lot by playing out on the playground. And I'd hate to see that taken away from our K-12 population. That's just my opinion. Use it as you will. Nobody's thrown anything at the screen yet. So I did look at the list of the 20 largest public school districts in the country, New York City schools being of course, the #1 largest public school district in the country. And I believe, Andrea, if I'm correct, middle school and high school are all online. Elementary is in the classroom or hybrid in the classroom. Both, she's saying both. She has 2 children adult children who are social workers with New York public schools. And and I think they will probably stay that way for a while. My concern as far as the pandemic is concerned is getting our teachers vaccinated. I think that's a big concern. Of course, vaccinations are states' rights. So, and states decide what the order is for everybody getting vaccinated. The interesting thing is East Tennessee teachers have all been vaccinated. East Tennessee teachers were online, kind of, sort of ish, the way we were all online from March until May, and then they all went back to school. Student teachers, all the teachers went back to school, and as soon as the vaccinations came out, East Tennessee made a plea to the state legislature and said, our teachers need to be vaccinated. So East Tennessee teachers are all vaccinated. The holdup, of course, in Shelby County, and I do not have any written documentation on this, but a lot depends on Shelby County schools. Like I said, when you have 14,000 teachers, administrators, and staff who are all online, it's hard to make a case for all Shelby County teachers to get vaccinated when 14,000 are online right now. So I think we might see that change if we put our own teachers back in the classrooms. different states are taking different protocols with that, but especially the middle and high school teachers who are around adult-sized bodies who we know now carry the disease much more than the little ones. We have a lot of teachers who are saying, I'm not going back to the classroom until I'm vaccinated. And so I think that is something that has to happen. Hopefully it will be in place and we can see all the K-12 kids and, you know, all of that happening again come August. Okay, so going forward, looking at what careers might look like for our students coming out of higher ed, I personally think it's looking pretty good. You know, a year ago, I think it was really hard for these kids to get jobs. My son wound up being able to secure his internship, his co-op last summer, and I remember him telling me they weren't able to hire for 2 positions. So at the place he was working, so they couldn't hire 2 mechanical engineers. So who do you get to work for you? You get an intern who you can pay a whole lot less and get a lot of the work done. But I do think that going forward, I think that if our kids who are graduating are flexible, I think they're going to see that they can secure positions. Obviously, I call them recession-proof jobs. My teachers will all get jobs. I have no doubt about that. We always need teachers. In the state of Tennessee, 1 out of every 7 public school teachers is not even certified to be in the classroom. So they are going to get jobs because my students will wind up unseating an unlicensed teacher. We're always going to need teachers. You know, one thing I would laugh about, Parker was, his co-op was in refrigeration. And I remember saying to him, you know, don't knock refrigeration, that's recession proof. Everybody's gonna need a refrigerator. So I think that if our students are flexible, if they are willing to think outside the box, I think that it's, I think it will be, I think the job market is going to be as good for them now during the pandemic as it was before. And, you know, I say that with all the hopes because I do have a child graduating and I want them to have a job. But I hope that going forward, they won't discount remote work. I hope they won't discount consultation. This age group, I think, and you know, I've talked to my own kids about it, and I think that they would like to be working with people. I mean, you know, we all remember, most of us remember our first jobs and being able to be in person. You know, I see Sophie Ostro is on here, and she had a very short amount of time where she was actually able to be in. I like that how you turn your video on when I start talking about you.
I just hear my name. I don't know.
And I see Sophie's kitchen behind her right now. So, but Sophie, what were you working for, like 3 months before this hit?
2 and a little bit, like not even 3. Yeah,
exactly. So, and there she is right there in New York City, where, you know, she could easily jump on a subway and get to wherever she needs to go. But, you know, I think, and I think you would agree, Sophie, that having that camaraderie with people, you know, to see people every day, you know, what, you know, just to walk by someone and say hello or go to lunch with someone is very important. When you are starting your first jobs, that social aspect is really, really important. However, you do need to be flexible enough to be able to work from home also. And, you know, some people love the idea of that. I've got to admit, I've kind of grown to like this. I've saved a lot of gas money, not going to Midtown every day. I've, well, my husband and I had to turn our attic into an office because our dining room table just wasn't working for us after 7 months. But but I've got to say, at my point in my career, I know how to do this. I know how to work this, and it's not that big a deal for me to work from home. But I would think that the 20-something population probably really would like to be around people, but I hope that they won't discount remote working. I hope they won't discount consulting, A, to get a paycheck, but B, to make yourself that much more marketable that you are actually willing to do that. I hope they build their resumes by showing off maybe, what did you learn during the pandemic? What skills have you accrued during a pandemic? What jobs have you taken on? What extra certifications have you worked on that you can throw into your resume? There's a lot of things that have happened right now that really, I think, make this younger population very marketable if they're willing to be flexible. Like I said before, how long is COVID going to be an excuse? We've got to get to a point where if one thing isn't working, try another. And just don't let the pandemic be an excuse for not being able to move on. At our university, they said to us that, and I was kind of annoyed that they did this, because they said, for our evaluations this year, don't worry about professional development. Professional development is out the window. There's no way you can get it done during a pandemic. I did more professional development during a pandemic than I think I've done in the 19 years I have been at Christian Brothers University, because there was so much I could access online. I probably got 40 hours going toward my next licensure renewal, because I was able to get so much done online. I've attended conferences that just a little bit about me. I've never been big on going out of town for conferences. My husband has been, Lon, because all of you know him, has been with Hilton for so long. He was always the one who traveled. I was always the one who stayed home with the kids. So if I can count on one hand how many times I actually left town for work in the last 23 years since Parker's been born, it's been a lot. But this opened up a whole new door for me, that I can attend conferences online, and it was great. And so there's a lot that can be done now. And I know it's 12:45. I want to leave a little time just in case you have any questions for me. But I just want to leave you with this. Those of you who have children, grandchildren, or if you are a 20-something, I just want to leave you with the fact that it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to worry. In my opinion, if you are worried about being good enough, it probably means that you already are good enough. So don't think that you are not going to get a job. Don't think that any of this has kept you from getting what you want. I keep a quote on my signature page, on my emails, from the late great Pat Summitt, women's head basketball coach at University of Tennessee. And it says, you have to believe you're good enough to succeed at the highest level if you ever expect to get there. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Send that on to your children, your grandchildren, or any of you who are in that position listening to me now. And Sophie, I hope that I've done what you wanted me to do.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your wisdom. I think now is a good time to open the floor up to anyone who might have a question about anything that Dr. Alperin talked about or didn't get to in what she shared. Are there any questions from the group? You can unmute yourselves or type them in the chat if you want. I know a question that's been on my mind is about technology and how much of a learning curve there has been, not only for students adapting to technology, but teachers adapting to technology, and also what other technologies have been used aside from Zoom. I think we're all more Zoom literate now than we ever have been, but I'm sure there are other technologies that have emerged from this. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
Everybody's kind of been using different platforms. Even before the pandemic, we were using learning management platforms, Canvas, Blackboard. I'm pretty sure that my experience with Blackboard goes all the way back to when my own kids were in grade school. Is that right, guys? At Chapter, you were using that kind of stuff, I think, back then. Definitely by the time they got to high school, they were using that. When my son went to Christian Brothers High School, he went in with the first group of boys. It's an all boys school for those of you who don't know. He went in with the first group of 200 boys. They were totally online. They had they were issued laptops. They had no textbooks. The whole no textbook thing is for a totally different soapbox I will go on one day, but not for the last 15 minutes we're together. But so we were already using those learning management systems anyway. Zoom's taken over, Microsoft Teams has taken over, WebEx has taken over. All these are so expensive for schools, for universities, for the upkeep. One thing we saw with Shelby County Schools when they decided to go all remote last August is they were issuing laptops to all kids who didn't have laptops. That was really well and good until they realized that, well, what happens when you get home and you don't have Wi-Fi? So that was a whole other learning curve. We had to get these kids hotspots, and hotspots apparently are somewhat government regulated. So you can't just hand somebody a hotspot as you can hand them a laptop. So I don't think our technology issues, in answer to your question, Sophie, have been fixed at all. I think they're here to stay, but I don't think that they are what's the word I'm looking for? I really don't know the word I'm looking for. Fully resolved. Thank you, Lon. I don't think that has been fully resolved.
On her side, she also has a good technical advisor that she.
Yes, I do. Anybody who needs Parker Alperin as their technical advisor, some of us have already reaped those benefits.
Awesome. Any other questions from the group? Ronnie, I see you unmuted yourself.
No, I was actually unmuting just to say I can vouch for that Parker is a wonderful technical advisor, even from remote. Thank you.
Amazing. Good to know. I love that.
Sam, I have a question.
Please.
Yes, Laura.
Okay. So, I have two kids. Darren graduated from his master's last year. Jason's graduating. I've got three. Haley's sitting next to me. She's graduating. With Darren, I had to encourage him. He had a hard time finding a job. You said everyone, they need to be, flexible in what jobs they can get now, coming out of college with, spending 4 or 5 years towards their degrees, and they were expecting these, nice jobs and whatever. And I went through that with Darren, and he took a job that was below what he should have been paid. So is that going to be the trend now? Like with Jason, should I encourage him just to take the job to get experience, that you've got a job during COVID?
So I kind of see smirks on both my children's faces because
Haley said that too. I wouldn't ask you.
I think any entry-level job is going to be an entry-level job. It is just the way it is. We have, both of my children, I thought that, and it's not, and guys, I did not tell you to major in what you majored in. But they are, my kids are STEM kids. They always have been. I've got one in mechanical engineering and one in analytics, and I'm of this hope that, they have such specific skills. But they are going to get, they're going to get entry-level jobs. I would love to think that, you know, their paychecks would be more than mine has ever been as a teacher. But, you know, I don't know. I think you land your first job, and then after that, you get your who you know job, because after that, you know, you make friends and you figure out, well, oh, this person is in, you know, I'm networking with this person, I'm networking with that person. You know, I've been a teacher, so, you know, our salaries are kind of stagnant no matter what. But, you know, I remember when Lon was changing careers, he was moving out of traditional architecture into corporate America. And it definitely, would you agree, became a who you know thing. I wound up introducing him to a teacher friend of mine. I ended up introducing him to her husband, and they have both had, you know, careers with Hilton now for well over 20 years. So I think they shouldn't be disappointed with the job that they get or the salary they get. It might not be their forever job. And if it is, and they can move up within their company, I think that's fantastic. I mean, that is, you know, it's what happened to us, and we've had a lot of longevity where we are, but it doesn't happen to everyone. And that's okay. You know, maybe Darren starts where he is now, and, you know, he gets to know people and he starts networking and he jumps ship, and, you know, in a couple of years and takes another position. But I do think that, especially now, these kids are lucky to get jobs right now in this remote world. I mean, if I'm correct, Darren, Darren pretty much works out of his car. So, which is fine. I think that's great. But yeah, you go from your marketable degree to the who you know degree after that. And that's, I think what most people, I'm kind of like, you know, well, I'm kind of looking at the screen, but, you know, I think that's what happens a lot. There are careers teaching, you know, if you're willing to stay in public and private school systems, you know, it's pretty much lock stock. It's, you know, and you progress that way. But, you know, I moved out of K-12 into higher education, and, you know, networked enough and got my position. And I think that's what happens a lot. But these 20, I mean, if you're 20 something, I think having that paycheck and benefits, I think is very worth it right now. And then, like I said, and then you use your who you know degree, and you start networking after that.
Nice, thank you. We probably have time for one more question or comment if anyone wants to jump in. Going once. Awesome. Well, I think a lot of you know where to reach Dr. Alperin if you have any follow-up questions or comments, and I'm happy to circulate her contact information if you don't already have it. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom. It's been such a pleasure and an interesting conversation. And thank you to all of you who have signed on today. It's always nice to see new faces and returning faces on these calls. Before we sign off, I'd love to share some information about the next lecture in the On One Foot Jewish Faculty Lecture Series, which will be 2 weeks from today on Friday, February 19th at noon, right back here on Zoom. And our speaker then will be Professor Dan Unowski, who is the chair of the History Department at University of Memphis. And he'll be talking about In the Shadows of the Holocaust, Jews and Judaism in Poland from 1945 to the present. So one of the beautiful things about this series is that every week is a different speaker and different topic. So hopefully you will join us again in a couple weeks for that. And thank you again for signing on today.
Thank you, Sophie. It's nice seeing everybody.
Thank you, Samantha.
Bye, guys.
Love you, Mama.
Bye.
Oh, I love you.
Be proud, I am.
Excuse me, Sophie,
Yes.
can you by any chance send the link to that
Sure.
that lecture? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because
Yeah, I'll email it around after this.
yeah, in New York, I'm not going to get that. So
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
but it sounds interesting. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, and
Thanks,
this was
everyone.
great. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye.